Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are stepping into today's second session, day-long proceeding. I'm Amitabh Sarkar from Informa Markets India, host for this session. We're going to discuss a very well thought, important topic apt in today's scenario. Without taking much of your time, I'd like to invite Mr. Subramaniam Pulipaka, Chief Executive Officer, National Solar Energy Federation of India, who will moderate the session, and as well as warm welcome to Mathur, CEO Sadvik Green Energy Private Limited, Lieutenant Colonel Manish Ahuja, Managing Director PRE SPL and ex-chairman Bioenergy FICCI, B. Prasad Das, Executive Director IESA, C. Murali Surapanani, Axis Group, Nausad Saifi, Senior Director Sales, India Jinko Solar. Over to you, Mr. Subramaniam. Please take it forward from here. Amit will join soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarkar. And it's really a pleasure to be here and moderate this panel. You know, very often when we talk about renewables in India, we comfortably ignore other segments of renewable energy. And again, it's not very often we have all possible sub-sectors of renewable energy sitting together on the same table or here in the same screen and discuss the way forward for energy transition in India. All of us know India has set up an ambitious target of 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022 and 175 gigawatt of renewables by 2022. Honorable Prime Minister Modi, at the sidelines of United Nations General Assembly in 2019, has pledged to increase the target to 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030, out of which 300 gigawatt will come alone from solar itself. This shows how ambitious targets can be set by the government. At the same time, how Indian government's resolve is very strong in supporting renewable energy proliferation in our country. On the other side of the spectrum, today, as we speak, India is the fifth largest country when it comes to installed solar capacity, fourth largest when it comes to wind, and fourth largest when it comes to the total installed renewable energy capacity. We are the world's sixth largest growing market for solar, and we still remain as #1 destination for renewable energy investments. These are all things or trends that will set tone for this decade of India's energy transition. If everything goes right, India will be home to world's almost 1/3 capacity of solar and 1/4 capacity of wind and almost 45% of world's renewable capacity by the end of this decade. So this decade is not only the decade of India's decade of energy transition, but it is a true decade of India's action. To discuss the way forward on how this decade of energy transition is perceived or can be perceived by different market leaders, I am joined today with a stellar panel comprising of solar, wind, biomass, and especially solar manufacturing. Over the course of next 1.5 hours, I will try to pick the minds of our panelists on what they think or perceive as the key potential areas of improvement, the actual potential of India's RE targets, and the way forward for us to achieve this ambitious target of 450 gigawatt. I'm very happy and glad to be joined by Mr. Murali S. Surapaneni Garu, who is from Axis, CEO of Axis Energy, and also representative of India Wind Power Association. I'm also very happy to have with us Mr. Devi Prasad Das, who is from India Energy Storage Alliance. Equally happy to have Lieutenant Colonel Manish Ahuja from PRSPL as well as CBII, that is Confederation of Bioenergy Industry Association. Apart from these three industry stalwarts, we also have veterans of solar manufacturing industry. Mr. Prashant Mathur here is representing Sadvik Group. Mr. Nausad Saifi is representing Jinko, and Mr. Krish Mukherjee is from Sova Solar. We have a very, very stellar panel, and without much delay, I would straightforward jump into today's panel discussion. So let's start with solar. Today, like I mentioned, India is on its course to establish a significant footprint of solar and achieve an ambitious target of 300 gigawatt by 2030. I would like to first ask Mr. Prashant Mathur, coming from the manufacturing domain, you have been in the industry for a long time. What do you think is India's potential for solar manufacturing? And do you think schemes like PLI and other incentives can actually help India become a global superpower when it comes to manufacturing in this decade?
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here. So if you see, let's start by what potential India has. So in terms of per capita electricity consumption, India is only 968 kilowatt hour per capita consumption. If you compare it with China, China is 5 times of what India per capita consumption is. US is 13 times and Canada is 15 times. So in terms of per capita consumption, India has a long way to go. And that means that, there's a umpteen potential of energy and electricity consumption in India. Now, where will this come from? So we all know that India primarily was dependent on thermal till few years back, and that is now changing. And what else than renewable energy? And it's not only solar, but I think every part of this renewable energy has to contribute to make India a powerhouse for generating and fulfilling this demand. So solar also has to contribute, wind, bio, and hydro, and everybody has to contribute. Today, renewable energy contribution is less than 20%. So there's a huge potential not only to increase the share, but also the pie itself has to grow almost 5 times to 10 times in coming years. Now, in terms of manufacturing, what do you require to have manufacturing? So you need to have demand has to be there in the market. So we have middle class, world's largest middle class. You have 300 plus days of solar. So the potential is there. India has huge potential for manufacturing. So the potential for manufacturing, if you compare it, what comes to my mind is how India did what it is doing in the automobile industry. So the same model can be replicated for solar manufacturing also. The biggest bottleneck for solar manufacturing till now has been that we have been very much dependent on imports. Now solar primarily for last so many years, when the power rate was very high for solar, 16 rupees earlier, to now it is low, as low as 2 rupees. So the potential is there, but in some way or the other, government has been subsidizing solar for all these years, and even now, in some way or the other, the government is subsidizing. So why should it subsidize for something which is more dependent on imports? So I think it is natural that manufacturing has to come, so that whatever is being subsidizing is actually getting feeded into the country. So the potential for manufacturing is definitely with all the policies which government has. Now, for last few years, the policies have been going up and down. So I think with the BCD announcement, obviously not yet notified, but everybody's expecting it gets notified and gets implemented from 1st of April. I think we will have, once we have a policy which is very clear, and once everybody knows that how this policy is going to work out, I think there is no reason why manufacturing cannot happen. And along with manufacturing, the ancillaries also will come. So there's a huge potential for both.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mathur. And I fully agree with you that it is the right time to unleash the actual potential of solar manufacturing in India. And the timing cannot be better, given our targets, given how we have been exposed in terms of our vulnerabilities in supply chain because of COVID. It is high time that we have to focus intensively on manufacturing. Now let us shift from solar for a little bit to storage. All of us know to accommodate intermittency of renewables, storage is the only viable option. Indian government themselves have come up with new tenders like RERTC, round the clock, peak power to promote storage. And if the rumors are right, we'll soon have a 2000 megawatt hour pilot project for dedicated for storage. So in this context, I would like to ask Mr. Devi Prasad Das from IESA, what is the kind of role you see for energy storage technologies integrating with renewables in this decade, and how important storage is going to be for us to realize our ambitious RE targets?
Thanks, Subbu. It's now the appropriate time for the energy storage systems. Now, it's good part in most of the forums now, cost is not the discussion point. Earlier, when you start talking about storage, people tell that, okay, cost is too high. That takes around 50% of time of the discussion. And then last 3 years, people tell that, okay, India don't manufacture storage. So that's usually take 50% time of storage. Now it's appropriate stage when we just talk about the application. The major mental barrier for the industry is already overtaken. So now applications taken from storage is just like a Swiss knife. Let's focus on the application stationary. Before that, why I tell Swiss, it used from our power electronics to electric mobility to grid stability to the commercial industrial or residential applications. Specifically for the grid stability, we tried for last 8 years creating appropriate policies in India. But last 8 years, what are the policies has not come in India. In last 8 weeks, it came up. It includes draft ancillary services, national electricity plan, where they are including energy storage as one of the part, waiver of ISTS charges in the energy storage, including RE, and now the multi-giga projects by NTPC and SECI for the transmission and distribution is really a thumbs up for the central government and few of the state government. But how it will be implemented? Because we all know that energy storage system is required. Maybe it is a rooftop solar when net metering is never be a solution for any of the countries for long term. Yes, it is a short-term solutions. Once it will over, then energy storage is required for the load dispatch centers to manage the generations from these renewables. Otherwise, it will be a nightmare for all the load dispatch centers across. That's one part of rooftop solar where storage is required. It is not only for the residential, also to manage the commercial, industrial issues like power backup issues, power intermittency issues, resiliency issues, or issues like power quality, which is now currently solved by the STATCOMs or like diesel genset. Now the multinational fundings like AIIB, World Bank, IFC, they are coming for the funding for the megawatt scale energy storage system for the commercial industrial space. This is one type of, second type of application. The third type of application is the generation. Large scale solar parks are coming. Solars are coming in the islands. To manage the shifting of the solar or the addressing the ramping issues, energy storage is required. And the central authorities, trending authorities like NTPC, SECI, they understood it in a better way. And the new MNRE whole body, including all the stakeholders, they are acting very fast than the earlier. Earlier for a pilot project, it used to take 2.5 years for the approval. Now it is within 2 months they are coming for the tendering. So it is on the good part. And parallel to that, BIS and other government bodies are creating appropriate standards, because otherwise, like Australia and others, we are hearing now the safety issues, fire issues in the ESS projects. India is working parallelly, which is a good part about India. This is about the large scale RE projects. Other part, if you don't consider there is no RE, but in the grid side, for the grid stability, ancillary services is coming. And another good part about India is we are technology agnostic. It's not about only lithium. It's not about only lead acid or pumped hydro. Yes, there are different lobbies from different industries and industry groups are there. But in most of the tenders, as a leading alliance leading and only alliance in India with 150 member companies, including many RE companies and manufacturers, we try to put it as a technology agnostic. It may be a 30 minutes or 15-minute technology application. Then lithium batteries or advanced batteries are suitable. If it is a long duration for 4 hours to 7-8 hours, then maybe zinc-based batteries, flow batteries, sodium batteries, or pumped hydro is suitable. So based on the application, technology need to be chosen. It not to based on the company's interest or the industry's interest. So that will create a holistic and technology neutral platform in India, and that stage is already arrived. Next 4 to 5, what will happen? We should think about the safety aspect. We should think about the second life of batteries, how we can handle this recycling, because these projects which will already installed in Puducherry or in Andaman or any other Delhi, after 5-6 years, batteries will come into picture. What will happen? How we will do the urban mining of this? And India should think about new technologies, because it should not be a dump guard of our neighborby countries who are manufacturing LFP and NMC. We should leapfrog from this current technology to advanced niche SEC. And where we should think about the technologies like solid state batteries, we should think about aluminum air batteries, and not only think, many Indian startups already started working on this. So it is not now, we should not think company is RE company or solar company. Now all companies are hybrid company. They should understand technology better. They should understand the energy storage better. Otherwise, they should. There are many examples are there across the globe. You should adopt the new technology, or you should stop your business. So it's the appropriate time. Many companies already become an early mover in this space. Few companies are working on this, and government is very supportive. And we see with the large conglomerates entrance into this space, and everyone is reading about it, it will be interesting space. And we are already at a good phase of it.
Very, very comprehensive, Deviji, and it is true. The actions of government are a true reflection of their intent. And we are seeing a very, very proactive approach from them. Thanks to the new resolve, the new missions, the PLIs, we are moving at a very accelerated pace, which is good for both industry and the sector. Now, coming from storage, let us take a step back and go and visit the grand old sector of renewables in the country, which is the wind. You know, when wind industry is one of the, I would say, founding members of India's energy transition movement, starting their proliferation almost 3-4 decades back. Today, solar has achieved the growth in the last 1 decade, but it was actually wind which has actually set the road ahead on which the other renewable technologies are now running or flourishing. However, it is with utmost sadness we have to agree and acknowledge that over the last 5-6 years, especially the last 2-3 years, there has been little bit a tricky situation for wind sector in the country. Maybe from the government's resolve, maybe from the evolving issues, or maybe from things that were not foreseen before. I would now like to ask Mr. Murli ji from Axis and also representative IWPA on how do you see the role of wind in the next decade, where of course in 450 gigawatt, Prime Minister said 100 gigawatts should come from wind, or around 80 to 100 gigawatts should come from wind. We are almost 40 gigawatt through 38 something. So where do you see the wind proliferating, and how do you see wind playing a role in this energy transition?
Thanks, thanks Subbu for reminding that we are becoming old. Yes, as I think I need to get a little bit into the historical perspective. And also throw some numbers at where we are today as far as the wind industry is concerned. As you rightly pointed out, being one of the oldest renewable energy technology that have started its operations in the country, as of 30th June 2021, the wind installations were around 39.5 gigawatt. Okay. And the reason why I took a cutoff of 30th June 2021 is, in comparison to that, as far as solar is concerned, we were around more than 42 gigawatts, okay? And once I will go a little back to the year 2016, as of 31st March 2016, the wind installation was almost 27 gigawatt against 6.7 to 6.8 gigawatt of solar. So the past 5 years have seen an exponential growth in the solar capacity. And while I'm making these statements consciously on wind, we have been actually working on solar projects and we have been investing into solar projects. Okay, so it's a natural transition probably that has happened, mostly because of the I would say there had been a proper government policies, or rather I would say the enabling environment for the solar to grow was much higher. And as you have reminded, even going by the conservative figure of achieving a 175 gigawatt by 2022, and as per that target, we were to achieve 60 gigawatt by 2022. So against this 60 gigawatt, if I compare where I am today, I am at a shortfall of 20 gigawatt. And I think one primary reason that I will, I would not accuse any other technology that has come up and replaced wind, because I'm also a very strong supporter of renewables and energy transition. So I will not get to a debate where I am going to talk about advantages and disadvantages. But I think basically, I think wind, as you rightly said, has seen a more than 2.5 decades of transformation in the system. When I say system, there could be policies, there could be the regulatory regimes that have changed. And also, if you all know, wind is restricted to just 7 or 8 states in the country. It's not a universally available resource, unlike solar. I think apart from that, we started off with a feed-in tariff regime. We moved to a GBI regime. We moved to an REC regime. Okay. And then all of a sudden came the competitive bidding regime. Probably we were very, as an industry, we were really not very prepared for the, the bidding regime. And unlike solar, because of this restriction to only these 7 or 8 states, and since we can develop the projects only in these 7 or 8 states, land has started becoming a very precious commodity. And the areas which had the predominant wind power potential were already exploited by that time. So effectively what happened is we probably were not able to really bring down our balance of plant costs. And a lot of other contributing factors which have also contributed for the increase in the turbine costing. I think one of the very important things that we need to actually discuss about wind industries, and specifically when it comes to the original equipment manufacturers, we have a manufacturing capacity of over 10 gigawatt. Even at a conservative note, we have a 10 gigawatt of manufacturing capacity. And over the last 4 years, our capacity addition has never crossed more than 1.3 to 1.5 gigawatt. So effectively, the utilization factor of your manufacturing capacity is less than 15%, or at times just 15%. So while on one side we have been advocating Atmanirbhar Bharat, making people self-sufficient, manufacturing self-sufficient, it is noteworthy to highlight the fact that 80% of the manufacturing for wind is a domesticated manufacturing activity. It's everything being done in-house. And for the OEMs, there had been a lot of ancillaries that got developed, ancillary industries, which were all MSMEs. So effectively, it is not only non-addition of wind capacities, it is also, I would say, injustice being done to the MSME sector, which actually started relying on the manufacturing base that have been set off in the country. Of course, blessing in disguise is today, India is being used as a manufacturing hub, and we are catering to the rest of the world. It's a good amount of business. I think the Indian industry is not surviving because of the Indian capacity additions. It is thanks to the other markets that we are actually able to survive. So it's a serious time that we do an introspection. See, while the RPO obligations are getting set, we have a solar and a non-solar RPO. And off late, we started talking about a hydro power HPO, hydro power purchase obligation. Okay. So if we want to really nurture and we want to really get the capacity from wind added over the next 1 decade, it's the time when we will have to relook into how we will have to promote this as a industry. Okay. See, one fit solution doesn't work for the entire renewable industry. It may be different for solar, it may be different for storage. And I think it's a serious time that we actually start looking into things. And I think the other important factor that was affecting most of the wind industry was the reneging on the contracts or the renegotiation of the PPAs. Unfortunately, as a first entry mover, we had most of our PPAs that were FIT tariffs that had been signed. Okay, and to keep those commercial interests in bay, of late we have seen a large phenomenon of curtailment of energy generation. So it doesn't restrict to forums like this. It doesn't restrict to the government of India or the state governments making policies. We will have some tooth and nails for the policies that we are making. And unless things are enforced in a proper perspective, I think this big dream of achieving the gigawatts, okay, in hundreds of gigawatts is something which we need to actually fine tune. And I speak this with a very strong conviction because I have seen this happening after every 5 years or 6 years, because we have seen the tariff regimes changing in the country, especially for the wind as a sector. I think that's all from my side, Subbu.
No, Murliji, you have hit the right note on 2 points. Number one, enforcement is important. It's not just enough to formulate a policy or regulation. Second, each segment of renewable requires a tailor-made solution to it. And I think that is of utmost importance if we are very serious about our RE goals. Especially 150 gigawatts should come from wind and biomass alone in next 10 years. Like you mentioned, 60 gigawatt in next 1 year, when it's almost a 20 gigawatt deficit. Wind is running, solar is running almost 60 gigawatt deficit. So it is very, very vital to focus on it. As you mentioned about domestic manufacturing, I would like to now switch focus to Mr. Krish. We have heard from Murli ji what kind of domestic supply they have, and the demand is not meeting the supply. I mean, the demand is less and the supply is more. In case of solar, the demand is never ending. We have pipeline projects, we have Kusum, we have rooftop, we have, government is coming up with DCR content. They already announced ALMM. So where do you see this, role of demand pushing the supply or increasing the manufacturing capacity? I, for a fact, know ALMM has around 8,118 megawatt. We are hoping that the capacity will be doubled by the end of this year. That is around 18 gigawatt. We are hoping we'll have module capacity by December. Where do you see the supply getting augmented with demand in the next 10 years?
Hello. So actually, the thing is that the government of India in the last 7 years, they have increased the capacity, the demand, the target capacity to 100 gigawatt, and that actually gave fillip to the total manufacturing sector here in India. Before that, the major manufacturing activity which was happening here in India was directed towards exports, mostly in the European markets. But since the target of 100 gigawatt was envisaged and the target was given to Indian manufacturers, everyone has definitely grown up a little bit. But along with that, then came a difficulty wherein the Indian manufacturers were not able to meet the requirement of the developers and the EPC players vis-a-vis the cost which were envisaged. At that time, the government's focus was mainly into developing the real generation capacity of the renewable generation capacity of the country. And then the government's support was mainly towards driving down the prices. As such, the nascent manufacturing sector that was here in India were not able to match the skills of some larger companies based out of various countries. And so a major bulk of the market was being dominated by imports. But since the government has taken into consideration the situation of the local manufacturers and considering the energy security of the country, the government has come up with various supports to the domestic manufacturers like the DCR scheme, the Kusum scheme, the CPSU scheme, along with the SGD. So right now there's a gap period for which everyone in the manufacturing sector is a little bit concerned. But more than that, we are thankful that the government is now mainly focusing to develop the manufacturing capacity here in India, and the government has MNRE especially in various meetings. They are very, very focused so that domestic manufacturing capacity comes up. As such, right, as you have already said, that in the ALMM list, we can find that approximately 8.5 gigawatt of manufacturing capacity is already there in India. And out of that, I think about the total market size here in India would be something around 8 to 10 gigawatt, which is going to get a major boost in the coming years. Like, we are already lagging behind in our 2022 targets, but it's mostly due to the COVID situation. If you look at the project pipelines and the tendering pipeline that we are having right now, there would be a lot of work that should come to Indian manufacturers. But due to the COVID disruption and all, there has been this lack. But along with this ALMM and the BCD, which is hopefully going to be notified soon enough and implemented by the next year, the domestic manufacturing sector should get a real boost. And considering the big conglomerates, they are coming into this manufacturing, coming into this business, renewable business, be it in solar or other renewable sectors. This gets a validation that this is going to be a big business, big opportunity. And as such, I think all manufacturers who are there in this business already, everyone is going to benefit out of it. And the country as a whole should also benefit, considering the job creation opportunities that this is going to create in India, and also the energy reliance of the company should be, we should be energy reliant in by doing this. And also I have reasonable belief that Indian manufacturers should be able to go for a global scale, so that we will not only be manufacturing for India, in India, but we will be also manufacturing for the whole world out of India, which would turn India into export manufacturing, renewable export manufacturing hub, and would give the economy a boost in the coming years. So I think there should be a reasonable amount of growth prospect, headroom for growth in the coming decade. And everyone associated, all the stakeholders associated with this industry, everyone should benefit out of this growth story of India.
No, well said, Mr. Krish. I agree with you that India should become a world hub, not only to meet its own requirements, but also to be a very reliable supplier. And as a country, we have a very good track record when it comes to supplying any kind of material. There are countries which trust us in the GCC area, and the African area, MENA area. So that's a very true sentiment that we should all relish. Now, shifting again from solar to bioenergy is very often the underrated sector, which actually has a true potential of involving people from the grassroots in our fight against climate change. We have government resolve or government's strong conviction to promote bioenergy has never been more visible than it is today. To answer my next question, I would like to invite Lieutenant Colonel Monish Ahuja ji from PRESPL, as well as the Confederation of Bioenergy Industry of India, to share his views on what is the kind of support that the government is extending to the sector. Where do you see the role of bioenergy in biomass in our energy transition story, especially while involving people from grassroots? Over to you.
Thank you, Subhuji. A very warm good afternoon to all co-panelists and all the attendees of this webinar. Thanks for inviting me to give a perspective of the biomass bioenergy sector in India and how the journey has been in the last decade or so and where we are transitioning towards. Biomass or bioenergy is a renewable resource of energy which has a direct linkage with the rural economy of the country. Biomass also has a direct linkage with the urban economy of the country. We have the resource available as agricultural residue, which if we are able to create a linkage for the energy purpose, has a plowback of the capital or the monetization, it could be electricity or various other biofuels, where almost 65% of that revenue goes back into the Indian economy system. This also supports multi-sectoral activities. So yes, the start point is the farmer, where we have various types of agricultural residue available, right from stalks to straws to cane trash. So there are segmental availability of biomass. What the government has been able to achieve in the last 15 odd years has been the optimal utilization of the industrial agri residue. So if you look back, there was a way for the sugar in the country, and thus you had sugarcane bagasse as an industrial residue, which the disposal was a problem. And hence the cogeneration of the plants started coming up in sugar mills, and we had the bagasse getting effectively utilized for electricity generation. The second wave came around the utilization of rice husk, which again is an industrial rice mill byproduct, and there was a disposal problem around it. And government stepped up and came forward to allow rice husk to be used in IPPs or small scale independent power plants set up across India. And there was a wave where this got funded and pushed by IREDA, and we had a lot of biomass IPP capacity coming. And I think India is the only country where the CERC has given a specific electricity tariff based on type of biomass being used. So if you use, let's say, rice straw, there is an additionality of process you need to do to be able to aggregate it, store it, process it. And hence, acknowledging that there is a forward integration of a technology which has to be used. And hence, CERC has given a tariff regime where, depending on the type of input biomass and depending on the technology used, it could be air-cooled condenser, water-cooled condenser, there would be a differential tariff. I think this is the only space where India is leading the world market to have such kind of in-depth knowledge and it being reflected in the tariffs. But, you produce electricity from biomass at a higher cost. In addition to 7 rupees or around 8 rupees per kilowatt hour. And as a product, I think the electricity might not make sense in the long run because you have the tariffs of the wind and solars at the 2.50 rupee range. So what do we do? And where is it that we can utilize this humongous potential? And the government numbers are in the range of about 500 million metric tons per annum of availability of farm agri residues. Where do we utilize this? And I think, again, complement to various stakeholder ministries in the government. So there's Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. there is Ministry of Petroleum, the Agriculture Ministry, Rural Development Ministry. All of them in their charters and mandates have looked at utilization of this farm agri residue. So the industrial residues are almost utilized to capacity. And now the next phase is to start looking at what the farmer does not have any utility value for. There is no economic value around it. Most of the farmers, because of the mechanization of farming or the harvesting practices, burn it in the fields. It's common knowledge today that we have 8 of the 10 most polluted countries in the world in India, and the burning of the farm agri waste by farmers in the post-harvest season is one of the major contributors to it. There are more, but this is one of the major contributors. So today we have multiple schemes for utilization of this farm agri residue. You have the electricity segment, you have the biofuel segment where there are gaseous biofuels as part of the Satat scheme of Ministry of Petroleum. You have the National Biofuel Mission, where you have the second generation ethanol and the drop-in fuel program, where again this farm agri residue would get utilized. More recently, a month back, you have for the first time the National Biomass Bioenergy Mission announced by Ministry of Power, which the contours are currently being authored, but it would mean that 10% co-firing across all coal IPPs in the country. So the NTPCs of the world, the private coal electricity generation units would all mandatorily have to use 10% biomass as co-firing, and which means India currently utilizes close to about 700 million metric ton per annum for coal usage, and that's the predominant way where we produce electricity, which means by this new regulation, government has created a demand for 70 million metric tons in one go. And we will see over the next decade, multi-ancillary feeding industries of biomass aggregation, biomass densification into briquettes and pellets, having forward linkages with the tenders that NTPCs of the world have for a new bio-based economy completely developing across India. So it's a paradigm shift, right? So what's the shift? Government has created demand. It is a new space which has got opened up. It has also opened demand for the private sector to play. So when you look today at, now I'm coming to the Ministry of Petroleum, when you look at the recently announced preponement of the E20 blending program, where we are going to blend ethanol in petrol. Honorable Prime Minister preponed it by 2 years in the announcement on the World Environment Day. So India is going to E20. Once we achieve those targets, we will march towards E100. Nothing stops us. So the flex engines will start coming. Already, Mr. Nitin Gadkari has started talking about 100% flex engines. When you look at sustainable aviation fuel, we are going to look at this biomass getting converted to sustainable aviation fuel. You look at the Satat program, 5,000 projects for compressed biogas announced by Ministry of Petroleum, 1,500 LOIs already signed. Month on month, this number is increasing. Priority sector lending allowed for compressed biogas projects. The cap of priority sector lending increased from 15 crores to 50 crores, enabling more projects to come up. Anybody with the entrepreneurial bent of mind, including an individual, can go up, apply online, and at the end of the month can have a LOI allotted and then can look at setting up this project. You can decide the scale you want to do. And the oil marketing companies are giving you an assured market. It's going to become mandatory. This has also been opened up to be put into the city gas distribution networks, to be put into the CNG pipe networks. So we are at a cusp of this biomass, bioenergy mission mode that government has put amongst us to take over, and I'm very cautious in saying this, to take over the National Wind Mission, the National Solar Mission. And why I say so is because when you look at wind, when you look at solar, you are looking at 18% of the energy mix that India has on the electricity segment only. And even when you look at the numbers where we would increase here, at best on the energy mix, we would go to a 23-24% number, which is the electricity mix. But the balance 75 to 80% of our energy requirement, and that's where even if you look at a small percentage of, let's say, 5%, would be much larger as an energy mix equivalency to megawatt electric or megawatt thermal, where biomass, bioenergy will happen. So I think I can easily stick my neck out in saying this, that the time for biomass, bioenergy is now in India. Lastly, we spoke about batteries, we spoke about storage, and yes, all of it should happen. But, you know, a growing plant is the best storage medium. Our energy plantation is the best storage of solar energy. And that gives you the base load electricity that you are looking at. So why do we need to have metal storage? Why do we need to have storage in batteries that we are going to construct and then look at a disposal problem a decade down the line? Why can't we look at better utilization where you're able to grow trees, you're able to use fallow land, you are able to mitigate the CO2 which is in the atmosphere because the trees utilize them in their growth, have negative carbon sinks, and convert them into a circular economy loop of producing, let's say, electricity or ethanol or compressed biogas or LPG and so on and so forth. This also opens up the new segment of biochemicals and petrochemicals, which is downstream logically going to happen. And I think the big boys of the industry, Reliance, Adani, SR, IOC, BPC, HPC, NRL, MRPL, the private sector, Shell, BP, Total, the commitments that they have made or announced at global levels will only see the biomass and bioenergy sector getting the due importance it has missed out in the last decade. So I think I can communicate that this is the sector to look at. Look at biomass wind hybrids. Look at biomass solar hybrids. And this is the way forward. Thank you so much, Subbuji.
Thank you very, very much, Colonel Ahuja ji. And I think it's a very, very enlightening remarks that you have just given. I think the future of bioenergy in India looks brighter, both literally and figuratively. And I think instead of repenting on the opportunity missed, government's very, very strong resolve to intensify their efforts into increasing bioenergy penetration can be clearly seen from what you said. And we really wish and hope that bioenergy also plays a very important role in conjunction, in co-location or co-generation with solar and wind. Now again, switching back to solar, I have Mr. Naushad Saifi from Jinko here with me. Jinko, we know, is one of the leading players of solar modules and cells. Mr. Naushad, Prashant ji, Mr. Krish have spoken before you about the manufacturing scenario in India, the push for domestic manufacturers. Murli ji has given the perspective from the wind side. According to you, what it takes for a company to come to India and, you know, tell that, okay, this is my base. I want India to be my base for setting up manufacturing. What kind of incentives, what kind of, you know, impediments you foresee that should be addressed so that from a foreign investor perspective, India can become an attractive destination?
First of all, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you, Subbuji, for giving me opportunity to talk about this very important topic. So, why should anyone should come to India to set up a manufacturing? It is a very big question which is there with everyone's mind from many years, and the government is also working different ways to convince foreign manufacturers or big manufacturers from different countries to set up manufacturing in India. So what do you think actually when you talk about the industry? So what is whole industry is about? So industry is actually not only manufacturers. Industry is IPP. Industry is the other ancillaries like glass, frame, and other component manufacturers. So what we think that if we can create the environment for all, if we can create the business opportunities for all, then the industry can grow. If we only look after the manufacture of solar panels or solar cells only, then I don't think it is a good chance for everyone. And in the same way, the manufacturers of solar panels and cell manufacturers will also not get the proper advantage of the market which they should have. If you compare with China, like China has created a solar parks in different regions, different provinces, and all the major ancillaries will available in the single location, so they can reduce the cost. They have their control on the manufacturing. So all this make together a better economics for the manufacturing. And another big point is that the requirement. If someone put up the manufacturing, then where the product will going to sell, that is very important. Where we're going to use the production. So in parallel, we need to support IPPs also, so that the demand will be there and market will be there. If market is there, then definitely solar manufacturing or module manufacturing will going to grow. So there is two things what we can think should be there in India to have a manufacturing in India, have a big manufacturing hub in India. One thing we should work on the solar manufacturing parks, like we worked for solar power generation parks in different regions of India. So we should have a solar manufacturing parks which will be having all the ancillaries and all the support, all the components which module manufacturers required or cell manufacturers required. That should be there, easily available, and have a full control of the supply chain, which will give a good edge to the manufacturers to produce at a better cost and can sell at the better cost to support IPPs. So both IPPs and manufacturers are actually sailing on the same boat, and so they have to balance each other. So once they balance, then they can able to groom the market together. They can nurture the market together. So secondly, in the current scenario, what I think is that if solar manufacturers, one thing is that government is working on the incentives. That is okay. That is wonderful. And government is working very well and creating lots of space for local manufacturers. That we are very happy to see that. And we hope that another big things will going to come up in coming years. But putting up barriers only will not grow the industry. So that is a one edge, that is one benefit which will be given to local manufacturers. That is very good, wonderful. But addition to that, we need to work out. Manufacturers had to work out on the innovative technologies, on the better efficiencies. In spite of traditional technologies or traditional things, we have to think a little different, and we have to work out on the innovative and new technologies so that we can provide better product and better efficiency product for the better economics of the project in spite of little higher premium or higher cost, so that developers will also have the benefit and can use the locally manufactured modules. So it's not good if we can if we push this traditional module at higher cost to the IPPs. That will actually deteriorate the economics of the project. So we should work out on the innovative technologies. We should work out on the high efficiency products. And another important thing which I like to mention is that to become a leader in India, manufacturing leader in India, we have to have a control or independency on the polysilicon. So polysilicon is something which generally controls the market. If you see most majorly this module manufacturers and cell manufacturers are walking on the tight rope, and they are majorly controlled by the poly manufacturers. So if we have a control, or we can offset some of the dependency by creating some manufacturing factory or big factory, maybe a government enterprise can enter into it, or maybe a big business hub can enter into the polysilicon manufacturing, then we can reduce some dependency from other country. If polysilicon is there, then other supporting industries like cell, wafer, module will come up very fast. and we'll have a control on that. So this is 2-3 things which is very, very important to create a manufacturing leadership in India. And one additional thing I want to mention, as Mr. Krish mentioned during his talk, that it is very important to match the expectations of the IPPs. If manufacturers can match the expectations of IPPs, then they will buy. And second thing is, he mentioned that we should not only look after the India market, we should look after the world as a market. So India is a good market, which is going to grow, which is growing rapidly. That is wonderful. But we should look at world as a market. So manufacturing in India is not for India, it's for the world. So we need to work out like that. Currently, like if you see, the current capacity is around 3 gigawatt of cells and around 15 gigawatt of modules, and around 5 gigawatt of solar inverters are there in India as per the MNRE reports. So, and but still that 15 gigawatt of India manufacturing, module manufacturing is not getting utilized because of the various reasons, because of the cost, because of the capacity constraint, lots of reasons. So we need to find out the way, we need to find out the bridge, the gap, why this 15 gigawatt is not going to be utilized. So we need to find out whether we can increase whether we can come up with a new technology to increase the efficiency of the product, so that developers can come up to buy these capacities and use these capacities for their projects. That is very important to know. And for the foreign manufacturers, for the international manufacturers, why they should come to India, it's very important to give them the comfort for at least 5 years. Because if they put up any investment in India, they need to look out that in the next 5 years, they're going to have the returns or not. What is the clarity on that? Like, for example, like SECI has announced a manufacturing linked tender. So that is a very wonderful initiative which the government has taken. But problem is that the PPA of those manufacturing linked tender is still not being signed as per my knowledge. So that is getting delayed, which is giving actually a bad impact to the international manufacturers, and they were thinking that it is not a good time to enter in India. So every big manufacturer is working on the opportunities to find why it is required, and when it is required. Everyone is working on that, but still nobody has to make up a mind to come full-fleshedly to India. So, but still people are exploring. We are also exploring. We are also working on the economics. So once the economics is there, we'll have the clarity for next 5 years, and we'll have the proper economics that yes, if we manufacture in India, we'll able to sell it in India as well as export it to other countries. So immediately there is no need of incentives, no need of any support. Immediately we'll come up in India and start manufacturing. So it's important to create an environment for everyone, not only only. That is not enough. It is, if we support solar cells only, that is not enough. We have to look out a big picture, all the ancillaries, all the supports, IPPs, everything has to be taken care, and every point of the industry, every part of the industry has to be groomed together. Then only we can achieve we can become a leader of the industry. That is the only way to do that. So that is my points about this.
Thank you very much, Nausir ji. You made very important and pertinent points. We had a very good session today, but before I conclude, I would like to give some last task to our panelists. Quickly, in your opinion, what are the 3 key words that come to your mind in terms of policy, regulatory, business, industry, infrastructure, ecosystem, whatever it is, that are needed for us to achieve our target? Only 3 words. If you cross 3 words, then there is no point of answering. I know Murliji doesn't need time to prepare, so I'll start with him.
So, consistency in policy, adhering to contracts that have been signed, implementing whatever has been visualized as a policy in real sense among all the member states. They should not behave like different countries.
Excellent, Murliji. Deviji?
Yes, for government, it's timely implementation. Whatever they're announcing, they should implement timely, not 2 months to 2 years. Industry, don't wait. There will be no ideal time will come after 5 years for you. What to do now. The third one about everyone, let's collaborate. Independently, we can't achieve. It may we have seen this from semiconductor to all the industry, which was supposed to be done in 3 years. Independently, global companies try to push it in different direction. It took 30 years. So with all due respect to all global, local, MSME, let's collaborate, which instead of 3 years, let's do it in 1 year.
Wonderful. Deviji on point. Let's go to Naushadji.
As I mentioned, is important, as Deviji also mentioned, that is important to collaborate. Yes, everybody should come together and should work as a single industry, and we can together we can grow easily. If we work on the different platform, that will be difficult. So, and from the government side, yes, clarity on the business, clarity on the how we're going to support in next 5 years, clarity should be there. And for the manufacturing side, if we get the clarity, then I think all the major manufacturers can come in India. So it is important to have a clarity on how we're going to have the business in next 5 years.
Good. So you are saying if there is collaboration and clarity, you are ready to bring capital and capacity.
Yes.
Colonel Monishji, your 3 words.
So, one is reasonably priced finance for the sector. And this is across wind, solar, hydro, biomass, bioenergy, because capital adequacy is required for the sector to move ahead. The second is all of this should get mandated as infrastructure play, allowing the NIF to be able to look at this sector as an infrastructure development for the country. The third is the price of premium for health and environment or carbon should get priced, and that as a country policy we must have, which in the business model should get the benefit for the RE sector at large. So these are my 3 points.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Krish?
The first one would be vision. That should be the government's vision for the country and the industry's vision for the future. Second one, I think, should be coordination or collaboration, as my esteemed colleagues, everyone said, that there should be a coordination between all the stakeholders involved. And the third one should be implementation, be it the policy implementation or any project or any plan that has to be implemented should be done on a time-bound basis. So these are the 3 points I would like to stress.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Since we started with Mr. Prashant Mathur, I thought it is only apt to end with him. So finally, your turn.
Thank you very much. So the 3 points which comes to my mind is consistent policy. So the government has to have consistency in policy, whatever it is, but it has to be consistent. When you have that, then you have the other is the consistent demand. So we have consistent demand. I think that's going to continue for years. So the consistent demand is there. Third is capital, easy capital availability at a fair interest rates, debt and equity. And if you have all these 3 ingredients, obviously it's time to make in India. So it's time to scale up manufacturing in India. And the time is now. We have all the policies, whether it is ALMM, whether it is the BCD, all that is consistently going to help all manufacturers to scale up and make in India.
Thank you very much, Mathurji. We had a very, very interesting session today. I, for one, I feel extremely educated in the last 1 hour. We heard from the wind sector, energy storage, biomass, bioenergy, and of course our own solar manufacturers. And one thing is very clear. India's energy transition story has just begun. The time is now to take every possible action. And it's not picture abhi baki hai, picture abhi shuru hua. So I hope the next 10 years will be a very successful decade for India's energy transition story. And all of us will meet again after 10 years to cherish the successes of the achievements that we have achieved in the last 10 years. With this, I would like to conclude the session and hand over to Mr. Sarkar. Mr. Sarkar, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam and distinguished guests for putting up such an insightful session. I am sure there are many takeaways from this session for participants. Thank you once again. We'll take a lunch break of 45 minutes and resume once again 2 p.m. with a vital and interesting session on CVC Financial and Investor Hub session. Please do join us there. Thank you, Shubha, and all the distinguished panelists once again.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.